Hi, this slide we are going to study the mechanical work during walking. This is the topic that many researchers around the world, biomechanists and robotists are working on because mechanical work and energy, like mechanical energy or the metabolic energies, are the main issues how human or the living bodies like survival strategy as well as engineering problem. So typically there are several questions are on this issue I'm interested in as well. So how we can calculate the mechanical work? Since we since we analyze the human walking using the rigid body model, we just follow the definition of the mechanical work, which is the time integral of the mechanical power or the displacement integral of the force and torques. So if you could find the torque and its displacement, you can just do the integral. If you could find the torques and its angular displacement, you can just do the integral as well. Typically, we use the joint torques calculated from the inverse dynamics and angular velocity where we can obtain from the motion capture, and mechanical power obtained from the experimental data are used often in the field, in the research field. And then the other issues are, well, those are actually obtained from the assumption that human body behaves like a rigid body, but it's definitely not, right? We have a soft tissues involved, and then viscera moves around while we are making a motion. So whenever those rigid body assumptions fail, those calculated work may be erroneous, right? So there are some studies how we can modify those error term, and then it ranges from small negligible error up to maybe 20 or 30% of the calculated work should be corrected, etc. And there is another fun topic for that. And I think this is, the most important and most interested topic for many researchers. How those mechanical work has correlated with the real metabolic work, chemical energy. So all the living bodies use their chemical energy, like from muscle contraction, like they're using the ATP for the energy source. How those energy sources are related to the mechanical work. Of course, the larger mechanical work might be related to the larger muscle work, right? But what are the correlations? Depending on the motion and depending on the speed and depending on the situation, it really varies. So experimentally, they are going to do some correlation work. So mechanical work and the muscle work correlation, and the muscle work and the O2 consumption correlation, since the energy source for the ATP requires the O2 consumption. So this is the typical experimental setup. You can measure the oxygen consumption for the subjects where they're doing the exercise. So by measuring between these, they actually obtain the correlation efficiency eta. Okay, and then for the various types of motions, those eta has been obtained from as a kind of tabular concept. So we match those mechanical work and the metabolic energy based on those experimentally obtained eta. It's a really fun topic. And also recently, it's really also interesting topic as well. How those wearable assisted device help human to reduce the energy, the metabolic energy or transportation costs. Suppose that you build the machine that will help the like elderly or the patients to walk, but what if your assistive device requires a lot more increase for the metabolic costs? So you'd better design the system which will also provide the help with the small minimal amount of mechanical energy consumption, as well as to reduce the user's metabolic costs as well, right? So the two parts, like a mechanical cost is what you can just calculate based on the math and physics. However, for the metabolic cost for the user who wears those assistive devices is you have to actually measure it, right? So that's why this third topic are in a big of interest. And also the fourth one, the recent study shows we actually include how human behave, how human consumes the metabolic energy while they are wearing those assistive devices. So this man-in-the-loop approaches are one of the popular approach recently suggested. So those are the advanced topic. that we are not going to cover in this course, but I strongly recommend you to do Google the keywords, and there are so many good research papers and articles that show up, and then if you're interested in. Okay, so coming back to this course, so mechanical work is during walking and locomotions are really fun, interesting topic. How we can analyze at this level. So we just, just worked on simple rimless wheel model for the very, very complicated human walking, and we worked on bipedal, passive bipedal model for the walking simulation. So for the energy-wise, for the mechanical work analysis-wise, can we actually approach those approach in terms of point mass kind of view? Point mass definitely very, very simple, but can we do the analysis, and those analysis results sort of gave us an insight about human walking related energy. That's what we are going to work on in this chapter. So we actually worked on a point mass and energy analysis before when we are working on the rimless wheel, remember? So those initial stance leg depicted as a light blue color has been rotating with the initial omega, and it hits the ground and the collision occurs. So your before collision speed will be reduced by MV plus, like this amount. So we calculated those energy loss during collision, and those were compensated by the slope, by the gravity. Like by reducing gravitation potential energy, you can compensate the collision loss so that you can keep walking steady state. But in real, what could be the possible way to compensate the collision loss other than using the gravitational energy potential drop? So assuming now, let's eliminate the slope. So let's assuming that you're walking on the flat surface and collision occurs, how you can compensate them. So for human, using their muscle force to generate the actuation torque so that they can compensate the collision loss. So of course there are many muscles that are involved, but we can categorize like ankle joint push-ups related actuation and hip joint flexion extension kind of actuation for the swing leg during forward movement. So if we analyze a muscle model, we can see those muscle activations are contributing in a different manner for the ankle plantar flexion related muscles versus the hip joint muscles. So there are two different, possibly out of many different approaches. There are walking assistive devices mostly focused on the hip joint actuation systems, like proposed by the Honda. So there are actuation for the flexion and extension, hip flexion and extension. As opposed to that, there are another approaches are mostly provide the assistive force around the ankle push-up. So using those I think this is elastic segment or actuation. You can provide the actuation for the ankle push-up phase. So for those two totally different approach for the gait assistance, can we do the analysis which one is helping in what differently compared to the others? That's what we are going to work on. We are going to use a very, very simple point mass work analysis and try to see if we can get some insight about how those ankle push-ups or the hip torque energy energy input could help to maintain the steady walking. So for now on, we are going to work on more details about how we can do the formulation for mechanical work on a point mass during walking.